this is not your grandfather's listing anymore. Cake is on fire. That's basically the best way that I can put this.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm having a fantastic day today. I got to tell you, the sun is shining. I got back and I just got my eyes checked. They told me I'm freaking blind, so we got that covered. You know, it's making me feel like I'm old, Lindsay, if I'm being honest with you. That's basically what today is like. How's your day going?
Hey, it's going good. You know, the eyesight loss might be because of like the 5 a.m. to midnight sitting in front of a computer every single day of your life. I that might like play a little bit into it. I don't know.
I'm sorry, who's the mother and who's the daughter on this call? I'm confused. I'm a little confused.
Well, maybe when you move to Charleston, it'll you'll have some relief from staring at your computer every day, huh?
It never ends. It just never ends, people. If you're listening and you've listened to the last couple podcasts, she never lets up. I just want you to know that. This is my life on and off.
I've tried to convince everyone, and I think today we have a winner of someone who I've convinced to move to Charleston. So I am glad to introduce newest resident, soon to be newest resident of Charleston, South Carolina, West Ashley specifically, is Adam Bowe from Cake. Hello, Adam.
Yeah, no, super excited to be neighbors soon, Lindsay. Thanks for having me on, guys. But yeah, Carey, you have to come to Charleston with us. I am very excited about long walks on the beach. Lindsay just talks about insurance, you know, with sand in between our toes. It's going to be fantastic.
So we're going to have to indoctrinate you into the IOP Sullivan's Island Club instead of a lot of people in West Ashley like to go to Folly Beach, which to me is like way touristy. Like I can't do it. Folly is like basically if the Keys threw up in Charleston is like what it feels like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a free agent, so I'm willing to join any team, IOP, Folly Beach. I'll be convinced. I'm going to tour around and try all the beaches. You know, whoever's got the best oyster shack wins. That's where I go.
Okay. I'm seeing where we can start winning you over. I'm taking notes.
Well, let's dive into this. Adam, it's been a bit since we've had a conversation, and I am super excited for the progress that Cake is making. You know, obviously you are right in my space and something I'm super passionate about. And guys, listen, if you are looking for an agency to purchase and you are still looking at a listing that is only that's almost like a yellow pages, you need to listen up because this is not your grandfather's listing anymore. Cake is on fire. That's basically the best way that I can put this. Adam, catch us up. What's going on in the world of Cake?
Yeah, no, it has. First of all, sorry, it's been a while since we've had a conversation, but it's because we've been building really cool tools. And anytime I pop my head out, you know, you're the first one I call. So excited that we can get together today. But yeah, so we've been burning rubber. We've launched buyer profiles. We've got Hawksoft integration. Soon to be another AMS announcement. Starts with a V, ends with a 4. I'll let you kind of draw conclusions there. I didn't say the name, but kind of in the next month or so that should kind of get announced. So easier than ever to upload your data to Cake, to start to analyze that. We've released some really cool tools that we'll get into about how to kind of analyze that asset. Buyer profiles, agents are able to market themselves. We're really bringing tools to those kind of medium-sized agencies, right? Like $5 to $10 million in revenue to play the acquirer on that inorganic growth strategy. And we've seen some great transactions. We've got our payment processing plugged in. So the team has been hard at work, and so far we feel like it's paying off really well. So excited to dig into all of it.
Yeah, so just for the people who are listening, if they've never heard of Cake before, Cake is an online platform for you to be able to buy or sell a book of business, a full agency, lots of different ways to do it. And the whole idea behind Cake is it's smart. So it's not just a listing where everybody under the sun can start bidding, but it's smart and can actually think about who is the best match and how do we create a marketplace for these books of business, and possibly would it be broken apart? Would the book actually be broken into slices? Get the whole cake and slice thing here. Anyway, broken into pieces where you could maximize as a buyer or a seller. Because we all know if you buy an agency, there could be a part that isn't necessarily perfect for the purchasing agency that might end up being a book roll or might end up being something that they don't have the expertise for. So the whole idea is this platform can sell the whole agency, a piece of the agency, multiple pieces of an agency, or multiple pieces of a book of business. And as a seller, you can possibly maximize that, what you have to sell. And as a buyer, you can actually pay for only what you want, which is kind of cool, right?
Only what you want. Or I think that like the flexibility and optionality is really one of the core tenets of how we built it, right? Like I think that a buyer could say, I'm only interested in this piece of the agency, right? A seller could say, that's cool. I've got another buyer that wants the piece you don't, right? So it maximizes the matches and the strength of kind of what you're looking at. The buyer could also say, it's simpler for me to buy everything, but instead of trying to ingest that book that doesn't work, I can actually flip that around and list that piece on Cake as just a fractional piece that I want to get rid of, right? So to us, it's optionality and control. You've got really smart people running agencies that have put their whole life behind growing this asset. They should have control over how they exit that industry or that agency, and agents should have control over how they grow that agency, if they're looking to acquire. And we love working with Agency Focus. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that we can get into on like some of the tools like that are coming that can start to get into like carrier optimization and some of the recommendations that I know Carey loves to sing about when she's talking to agents. How Cake can kind of highlight some of those metrics that matter so that you guys can have really, really robust, like strategic conversations around acquisitions.
As I'm listening to you talk, we know this so well inside and out. Like we do. We live, breathe, and sleep this stuff all day long. But if someone's listening, how would you correlate how to think about Cake into, another part of our life that we all use or think about? Like, tell me how would you correlate it for somebody?
Yeah, I think Cake is kind of the Zillow, right? Like you bring forward the Zestimate, which is our book valuation engine. So when you upload your book of business, you can see a low, median, and high multiple of that book value. You've got some underlying metrics around the neighborhood, the historical trends within that, some of the stuff that's driving that valuation. And then I think, an agency focus is really the real estate agent, right? Like who's helping you kind of strategically market, to evaluate offers, to guide you through that transaction. So I think you've got kind of that experience there. And then Cake builds the tools. Like we've got our virtual data room. That doesn't happen in kind of a vacuum, right? It's an area to exchange sensitive documents or legal documents, but having someone guide you through that, an accountant, legal advisor. I know, Carey, you've got some partners on that side that you're really passionate about working with. And so those are kind of the areas that we think of ourselves as kind of the rails to effectively do the transaction. But people and relationships still drive really important parts of this, because it's such a strategic and big decision to make that you need the experts involved, right? So we make it easier for the experts to shine and help agents make the right decision, I think.
So Adam, walk me through the actual experience that someone would go through when they click on the listing from the buyer perspective. And then I'd also love to hear from the seller's perspective what that process looks like.
Yeah, so I'll start you a little bit earlier than that. So when someone comes into Cake, we don't know if they want to buy, sell, or just get a valuation. And I think one of the beautiful things on the InsurTech side is that I get to market just kind of two independent agents at large, right? Because they all kind of congregate together in these areas. So an agent would come in, tell us a little bit about their agency, build kind of a basic profile, right? Then they tell us if they want to buy, value, or sell. If they want to buy, they get the opportunity to build what we call their buyer profile. So this is where they actually get to kind of set their appetite model, if you think about it that way. So the states they're targeting, the carriers they're interested in, the lines of businesses where they want to grow, right? Account size stratification, kind of their filters that they're looking to target in on. Then they have a little bio information to kind of tell about their agency, their history, the goals of their transaction. Again, I think there's still people powered pieces of this transaction. And so when they come through, they click publish. That buyer profile goes into our buyer connect section of the platform, and agents that are selling could actually go and see that, right? Now a buyer would then be able to see the listings on our platform. And those listings are anonymous to start. That's really important for agents that are on the sell side, is they want some anonymity early in this transaction, so that they can kind of keep a low profile. They're not getting blown up on calls, and this is that early diligence piece, right? So buyers are able to see the listing details of kind of total premium, number of customers, policies to customers, lines of business, breakdown by state, by carrier, by line. A lot of the metrics that matter for a buyer being able to say, hey, I'm interested in moving forward or not, right? A buyer would then be able to message that seller in our on-platform messaging. Again, still anonymous at this point, but to be able to ask some of those kind of top line questions of, hey, what's your loss ratio, or why are you selling, right? Like kind of start to dig into some of that stuff. And then that's where the agents tell us, hey, we're interested in moving forward to this next step. And that's where they get a virtual data room opened up for them. You start to facilitate the NDA execution so that you can start to exchange that data a little bit more frequently, carrier reports, et cetera. But that's kind of the early view of like the buy side. Create that buyer profile to market yourselves, find and look at the listings, be able to see kind of that matching score that tells you about how those listings impact your book of business, and then engagement with those sellers at the top of the funnel and that early diligence. So sorry for taking up a little bit of oxygen on a longer explanation there, but that kind of gives you like soup to nuts on a buyer's early journey of engagement with that listing.
And what about the perspective of the seller?
Yeah.
How does that normally work?
Yeah. So same journey up till building the buyer profile, right? And then they kind of break off and say, hey, I want to get a valuation or sell. That's where they would integrate their book of business. Ideally, the buyer does as well, but doesn't necessarily have to. But to create a listing, you need to upload your book of business data, or you can create a more like surface level one. But we really recommend that you upload that book, because it drives a lot of the kind of early diligence that happens on the buy side. So you upload that book of business, and then you could create either your full book listing, or you could break it down by slices, right? So by line, by carrier, by state, right? You can cut this a couple different ways. But then you would click to list that book of business. But kind of prior in the book management, you get some of the book valuation features there. You're able to kind of analyze the metrics that are driving, some of that, be able to publish that listing anonymously. And then, it's kind of fun, right? Now you're getting message alerts for buyers saying, hey, I'm interested in talking about this listing with you. And it's almost like being like a really attractive person on a dating website. My wife and I we met on a dating app, and I think her app experience was very similar to a seller's experience where she had a lot of folks reaching out. Mine was very interesting. Mine was a little bit more similar to a buyer's experience where I was chasing her to try to get the conversation started. And so sellers are able to engage with buyers but do so in like a protected way, right? Your name's not out there, your agency name's not out there. And you can kind of suss out, you're asking buyers questions too, right? Like, do you have cash on hand? Are you looking for seller financing? Like, there are things that are going to tell you whether you're interested in working with those persons or not. And so you have the opportunity to ask that prior to moving deeper into the transaction.
Yeah. So you've actually said there's transactions happening on the platform, because the last time, you and I, or maybe I listened to the last time, we were just doing the buyer profiles, and there was definitely books on there. So of the transactions that have happened on the platform, were they slices? Were they full books? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So we've had 7 transactions so far, and 6 of them have been full book transactions, right? So we've had 1 fractional transaction. It was actually slicing off a little bit of a trucking book, which is interesting because that was always like the use case that I said. Like, trucking was kind of like a weird niche that, like, if you specialize in it, it's great. If you don't, it can kind of sink you on the servicing side. So maybe I spoke that into existence. I don't know. But the rest of them have been, kind of typical full book transactions. So mix of commercial and personal lines, like smaller to medium sized books. You've got, I think we've had a $4 million in premium book transact. And then, kind of average size is around that, like 1 to 1.5. Typically able to transact. I hesitate to say quickly because I don't think the goal is speed, right? Like, you're able to transact efficiently. We've had a transaction take place in kind of as little as like 35 days there. But I don't think the goal is necessarily speed here. There are obviously sometimes mitigating services, but I think the real thing is that the sellers are able to maintain control over how quickly and efficiently they're able to drive their transaction. Sometimes speed is important, right? You've got things that are happening outside in your life and you need to sell. But I hesitate to like highlight the speed of the transaction because I don't want to make it seem like we're rushing sellers to make a decision. You know what I mean?
Right. So one question I have is, if someone posts their full agency on Cake and there's a buyer, so take that trucking, for example. If there's an agency who does, their commercial book is 24% trucking, 25% manufacturing, and then 50% small bops. Could someone look at their agency, they have their whole agency, the whole Cake listed, and say, hey, I only want this trucking piece, or I only want this manufacturing piece? Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. But again, the seller's in control, right? And so what can happen is, like, one of the things that I think we've had sellers be like a little nervous about is like when you start talking slices, there's almost this feeling that like I could like check out without talking to the seller. Like, I'm just going to take the trucking out of there and leave everything else. And the seller's like, whoa, 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 I wanted to sell everything else. What we've seen, and this happens kind of in the message threads, is that, buyers will reach out and say, hey man, fantastic book, love it. I'm really interested in slice 1 through 5, not 8 through 10, right? And kind of interested in, 6 and 7. And then a seller could say, sorry, only going to sell the full book. I'm not interested in kind of doing multiple transactions here. Or that's great. Let's kind of slice that out and pull it out, and we can discuss and move forward on that portion of the transaction. But yeah, sellers are in total control with how they move forward there, but we do surface that opportunity for them, and buyers are absolutely asking questions like that.
So what happens if an agency, like say this agency, the trucking was bought, the manufacturing was bought, but the 50% bought was still there? Does it just live there forever until someone else picks it up?
Yeah, I think you can do a couple different things there. I mean, sometimes people want to sell a slice of a book of business, and it's not that the other piece didn't want to be bought. It's that they actually want to keep running that piece, right? So I want to sell off my personal lines, but I'm going to keep my commercial lines, right? Because I'm not like Carey. I think, one of the things that I think is interesting, like, backstory, I think Carey and a lot of the stories she tells on the sellers that she's helped has informed a lot of the ways we think about this. But I think about someone that, they want to retire in 3 to 5 years, right? Well, instead of trying to like maintain that book but not grow it because they've kind of run out of growing a book that takes energy. Like you're beating the pavement up, right? And so if I'm 3 years away from the transaction, maybe I want to slow down just a little bit. But instead of kind of having that book slowly maintain or like have like a not really have that growth, I can actually sell off a piece of that, but then continue to work a smaller book and work it well enough to where I'm growing that asset so that 3 years from now, I'm still getting good value there, right? Like that's kind of the use of the fractional transaction or one of the uses that I see of a fractional transaction.
I basically know there's a lot to this. And actually it's a different way of thinking. There's no two ways around that. And I think the first time you hear it, you think to yourself, hang on a minute. There's no way to sell a slice or a book or a piece or whatever. But then when you think about it in practicality, number one, there are people who say, I'd like to take a little bit of chips off the table, but I'm not ready to leave the industry completely. So oftentimes I have agencies who say, you know what? I love commercial. I absolutely love commercial, but I don't particularly like my benefits book, or I really love doing the benefits part. Maybe I'll sell my personal and commercial book and just stay engaged on the benefit side of things. It is a great way to step out of the industry, but stay connected. The challenge is when there's crossover of books and then who owns the customer. So this isn't like perfect. There's not everything figured out, but that happens all the time. I've had several agencies this year who said, we want to focus only on commercial and we want to sell our personal lines book. Well, the question is, you're still staying in business. That agency's still operating. And when a personal lines lead comes in there, am I now competing with you against that? Or are you going to send all those leads to me? Those things have to be figured out. But the whole idea is facilitating a conversation and facilitating a transaction that makes sense for the buyer and seller is what Cake does. And it puts some structure around those things, right?
Yeah. And I think, just to again highlight, 6 of the transactions have been full book, transactions, right? So the fractional piece is control and optionality to the agents, right? Like Carey, you brought up a great point. One of the things that we work on is that highlighting accounts that have, if you're selling a slice, right, highlighting an account that's tied to that same customer that isn't in that listing, right? And like kind of recommending like, hey, the buyer's probably going to say, I want all of your commercial book, but I also want the personal lines that are tied to those same customers so that we're not in any sort of competition, right? Like that's kind of a cleaner cut. That's where I think that agency focus really comes in, is that you've got someone that's providing that strategic guidance on the data that Cake is able to surface there. But frankly, I mean, just the dynamics at play in the industry, you're seeing a lot more full book, full agency transactions that are coming. And I think what we do is a really good job of is just helping those folks kind of get started in that transaction and attract the right kind of talent in a Carey or in an accounting service or in a legal service to help kind of guide them using our system.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to trying to find your way through this. Like, listen, this might be your largest asset, or it's definitely going to be in your top 5 largest assets. Doing it by chance, basically finding a potential buyer or finding a potential CPA or accounting firm or lawyer, it shouldn't be by chance. It's meant to be a marketplace where, listen, these are the people that understand this space. They can be great advisors to you. One of the biggest things I tell agents is find your team. Well, heck, you can upload your book and actually find the resources right there to say, well, who should I trust and who should I seek out as for advice as I go through this process. That's the whole point. And don't sell to the first person who reaches out to you or the one that has the timed call that makes them, they happen to call you on the day that whatever you were ready to make a decision. Make sure you create a marketplace for your agency. It is a valuable asset, and Cake can do that for you, which is pretty exciting. I love the whole idea of making it connected. And honestly, it's what Agency Focus has been about. We're not just going to do your valuation. We're not going to drop after the valuation. We're going to be your quarterback through the entire thing. I'm not a lawyer. That whole concept is true, and it runs through Cake as well, which I love. There's a reason why we have some synergy between what we do, right?
Yeah. No, well, you helped quarterback some of the vision on this side as well, No, I think, like one of the coolest things about this industry, I love it so much, is the power of the word of mouth. So like I did a podcast with Hawksoft recently, and I love their structure of they bring on a shared user. So like an agent that uses Cake and an agent that uses Hawksoft. And one of the things I talked about was I don't know that agents totally understand the power they have to shape the next wave of InsurTech, because InsurTech is so desperate to like get agent feedback, agent buy-in, and like build the right tools so that they'll use it, right? But one of the things that just is amazing about this is the power of the word of mouth in this industry. So if you do it bad, if you like don't handle an agent well, it's going to cut you. But if you do it well, you can really just like totally unlock breaking into kind of the zeitgeist. And like an example of that, and an example of why Cake exists, in a Facebook group, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, a user posted anonymously and said, I'm interested in selling my $1 to $2 million agency in Oklahoma, but I'd like to keep a low profile while I'm engaging with buyers, right? And Jody, just an absolute rock star, commented and said, I highly recommend checking out Cake. They've been fantastic, and you should check them out. Which was awesome. We got a ton of users in like the next 2 hours from that, and she didn't even tag us or link. They just like searched us up, which was fantastic. But then in the comments, all the agents were like, I want to talk to you, message me directly, here's my number, give me a call. There was like, I don't know, 30 to 40 comments underneath that were really trying to drive the seller to like engage with them directly. Whereas like in their comment, they said, I want to keep a low profile. Right. And so it showed a little bit of like, one, I think, I'm so happy that my team made Jody feel, excited to use Cake, and she liked the platform. And so she was able to highlight us. But I think that example of, I want to sell, but I'm posting anonymously, and then the response I get is not kind of supporting that. It's more so like everyone is really excited to grow. So I think that's where Cake can kind of service both sides. We bring opportunities to the buy side, but then we provide that anonymity and that confidentiality to the sell side.
which is so crazy important. It's so important in this environment we're in. I have a wrap up question for you, Adam, because honestly, we could probably talk for hours, and we have talked for hours. I believe that we spent, I don't even know what it was that one time, but I think it was 3 hours on a call at one point that was not meant to be. So let's not do that.
It was supposed to be a 30-minute call, and I think it was 3 hours later. Yeah.
100%. That says a lot about us, but also how excited we get about all of these things. But tell me how the hard market is impacting Cake. Like when you first started this, the hard market wasn't really a thing. I mean, that wasn't what everyone was talking about. Let's just put it that way. How do you think the hard market has impacted Cake and the adoption that you've seen?
I actually think it's made Cake, like, I'm glad that we're here when we're here, because like Citizens in Florida, there's been some kind of crazy stuff there. And so like some folks were losing access to be able to write there, but then other folks are keeping it, right? And so it wasn't the policies that were bad necessarily there, is that they didn't have 3 other carriers to be able to like keep their access to Citizens. So we had an agent that had a Citizens book that needed to sell that to somebody that was going to keep market access, right? So I think that like what we've been able to do is smaller agents that kind of struggled to grow in the hard market, but you know are saying, hey, maybe this isn't for me and I'd like to get out, right? Still have a way to you know sell the asset that they have that they want to. I think folks have been able to look at niche growth, right? So like, I want to find just that commercial trucking. And I think that actually is like really, really encouraged, because like the carriers that have good relationships around niche lines of businesses are kind of, you know, really interested in that. So it's kind of a win-win-win. So for me, I think I'm happy Cake is here within the hard market, because I think it gives agents another option on how to approach the strategy with their book of business, either growth or how they optimize and manage that.
Yeah. I would say that, you know, if you were on the fence and you've had some things impacting you, having Cake here creates opportunities for you. And there are lots of agencies that are still looking to grow by acquisition. Oftentimes people say, like, how has this changed with interest rates rising? I don't know. Talk to any lender, talk to anybody who does valuations, talk to any lawyer that does M&A. We're busier than we've ever been. I think that this environment has created opportunity on both sides. And if you're a really well run agency, I think multiples are staying true. The things that I think is the miss is multiples are lower when you don't create a marketplace for your agency. When you only talk to one buyer, you absolutely are leaving money on the table. So Cake allows you to do that in a way that, again, you can keep some anonymity. It really is very well timed for our industry, and, you know, for the amount of people that are looking to retire and looking to maybe take some chips off the table. It really is, you know, one of the many options that you can explore, but I think the timing is impeccable. I'm super pumped about it. And I can guarantee you, this is probably not your last appearance on our podcast. There's lots of things for us to dig into.
Next time I'll be in Lindsay's room with her. You know, we'll just 2 heads in the same little window there, because we'll be
not Carey, because she's not moving to Charleston apparently.
Yeah, we won't be on Folly Beach though. You know, IOP only. You know, represent.
So let's make sure that we shut this down properly. Let's make sure if someone's listening to this and they have not paid attention to what Cake is and now they're interested, how do they find you, Adam? Yeah. Where do they go?
www.haveyourcake.com. You can create a free account. The book valuation tool is free. So we show our work before we charge you anything, right? Like you could just come in, just get your Zestimate. But I think you're going to be interested in more. You can find me at /Adam Bowe on LinkedIn.com, or email me at adam@haveyourcake.com. Love talking to agents. So hit me up on any of those channels. You will find me for sure.
Well, thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.